As the long winter nights descend, the world becomes quiet and distant. Inside, the light is dim, movement slow, and there is no urgency. This isn't a story of struggle or change, but of ordinary people sharing warmth, familiar routines, and the peaceful comfort of sleep during a harsh season. Tonight, we'll stay here, listening to the winter outside and observing the gentle rhythm of life inside. You don't need to do anything, and you don't need to go anywhere. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from today onwards? Just let the day gradually fade away and let the night fall naturally around you. Then, at your own pace, let the story flow and gently lull you to sleep. Snow falls thick and slow over the high plains of Wyoming. The wind has been blowing since afternoon, and now, as night settles, it sharpens and grows colder, combing through the grass that still shows above the drifts. Far from any town, a small cluster of canvas tents sits in the open, their shapes hunched and pale against the blue-grey dark. Inside one of those tents, Ethan Cole moves carefully, the way a tired man moves when every motion costs a little more than he wants to admit. Ethan is in his mid-30s, tall and rangy, with the long, spare muscles of someone who has spent more years in a saddle than on a chair. His face is narrow, the cheekbones a little too sharp, as if winter has carved away what was left of softness. A short, uneven beard shadows his jaw. He shaves when there is time, and lately there has not been much time. His hair is dark brown, cropped close to stay out of his eyes in the wind. People who know Ethan would say he is quiet first and stubborn second. He listens more than he speaks, gives short answers, rarely raises his voice. There was a time, years back, when he laughed easier. Then a late spring blizzard took most of his father's small herd, and his father's health followed. Since then, Ethan has carried a steady, hidden worry that never quite leaves his shoulders. It has made him cautious, observant, and slow to trust luck. Now, in the yellow glow of a low lantern, he kneels on the frozen ground and unrolls his bed. The tent is not large, 8 feet by 10, canvas walls stained with smoke and old weather. 4 men share this space, though it feels smaller when the wind pushes in on every side. The canvas billows inward with each gust, and then snaps back, the roof ropes humming softly. Ethan spreads his canvas ground sheet first, the fabric stiff from frost. On top of it, he layers wool. 3 heavy blankets and 1 thinner quilt, patched from old shirts. The wool smells of smoke, horse, and faintly of wet dog, the permanent scent of gear that has never truly dried since the first snow. He smooths the folds with his hands, checking for hidden ridges, for small rocks that might press into his ribs for hours. Around him, the others have already settled. Closest to the tent flap lies Tom Garcia, a broad-shouldered man in his late 20s, with a round, tired face and a faint scar running from his ear to his jaw. Tom is the kind who jokes loudly around the fire, but falls silent once his blankets are up. Tonight, he is already turned on his side, hat tilted over his eyes, one hand tucked under his cheek. His breathing is slow and even. though Ethan suspects he is not fully asleep, just conserving energy, like everyone else. Beyond Tom is Ben Turner, narrow as a fence post, with sandy hair and a restless leg that never quite stays still. Ben is younger than Ethan by 5 years, and still carries a scrap of impatience in him, the kind that hasn't yet been worn down by long winters. He mumbles something about coffee in his sleep, and then goes quiet again, the brim of his hat touching the canvas wall. At the far end of the tent, parallel to where Ethan is kneeling, lies Walter Hayes. Walter is the oldest man in the camp, late 60s, maybe more, but age sits on him in a way that looks solid rather than fragile. His body is lean, though not thin, the kind of leanness that comes from work instead of hunger. His hair, once black, is now mostly silver, cut short around his ears and falling in uneven waves at the back of his neck. His beard is white and neatly trimmed, framing a mouth that rarely smiles wide, but often curves at the corners when he notices something quietly funny. Deep lines cross Walter's face, carved by sun and wind and squinting into distance. His eyes are a soft grey blue, steady and unhurried. People say Walter never rushes to speak and never rushes to worry. Years ago, in another winter on another range, he rode out with 2 friends to turn a herd in a storm. Only Walter came back. Since then, he moves with careful intention, as if every small decision, where to step, when to tie a knot, how tight to pack a bedroll, might someday matter more than anyone expects. Tonight, Walter is already lying in his blankets, on his side, facing a space where Ethan's bed will be. When they first rode out together weeks ago, Ethan noticed that Walter always leaves a narrow gap beside him when the tents are laid, never sprawling to take more than he needs. At first, Ethan thought it was habit. Later, he realized it is something else. A quiet invitation. A place kept open for whoever needs the extra warmth most. Ethan finishes smoothing his blankets and eases himself down into that waiting space. The wool accepts his weight with a muted crunch. Fibers compressed over and over by many nights like this one. He stretches his legs carefully, boots still on, then bends his knees to fit the narrow rectangle of warmth. His shoulders brush the canvas wall on one side, and Walter's back on the other. The tent feels at once too small and strangely safe, like a thin shell between them and the enormous, indifferent dark outside. For a moment, Ethan lies on his back, letting his eyes adjust to the dimness. The lantern near the center pole is turned low, its flame barely taller than the wick. Light pools around it, then fades outward into shadow. The outlines of the men become soft shapes under heavy blankets. The air smells of wool, leather, old coffee, and the faint metallic tang of snow melting on canvas. He listens. There is the slow exhale of Tom near the door, a soft rasp at the end of each breath, the lower, almost silent breathing of Ben, the whisper of Walter's lungs moving steadily in and out, as unhurried as if he were sitting at a table, not lying on frozen ground. Beyond the tent walls, the camp is settling. Somewhere to the right, a horse snorts and shakes its head, tack jingling briefly. Farther off, another tent flap drops closed with a muffled thud, followed by a murmur of voices, and then quiet. The wind pours past, dragging snow with it, a long, steady rush that rises and falls but never quite stops. Ethan turns onto his side, facing Walter's back. The older man's blanket is pulled up nearly to his ears. His hat rests above his head, crown touching the canvas wall, brim shadowing his face. In the reduced light, Walter's hair glows pale against the dark fabric. "You all right there?" Walter's voice comes low and rough, barely more than a vibration through the blankets between them. "Yeah," Ethan answers softly. "Got enough room." "Good." Walter's words stretch out slowly, shaped by habit more than thought. "It'll get colder before it gets better. Best start close." There is no lecture in the tone, no drama, just a simple statement, the kind that has been true in every winter he has known. Ethan nods, though he knows Walter can't see it. He pulls his own blankets higher, tucking the edge under his chin, then under his shoulder, sealing the worst of the drafts. His hands are stiff from the day. He buries them in the space between his chest and the wool, waiting for them to grow less numb. The ground beneath the canvas is rock hard, the frost driven deep. His hip already feels the pressure, a dull ache that he knows will never fully disappear during the night, only move as he shifts. Another gust rolls over the tent, louder this time. The canvas bows inward, pressing briefly against Ethan's shoulder and the curve of Walter's spine, then snaps back. The center pole creaks, ropes strain, stakes in the frozen earth answer with a faint metallic ring. For a brief second, the wind finds perfect alignment with the tent seams and guy lines. The sound changes. No longer just a rush, but a series of soft taps and drumming beats along the canvas. It is strangely regular, like fingers counting along the ridge. Ethan closes his eyes and lets the sound wash over him. It feels in that quiet, as if the wind is taking attendance. One along the front wall, one along the back, another over the roof, as if each flap and rattle is the night asking, without words, who is still awake? Who is still here? The idea passes through his mind, not as fear, but as a distant, almost gentle thought. Nature is not curious about them, he knows. The storm does not care. Still, some part of him imagines the dark outside, vast and time-worn, pausing to notice the thin shell of canvas and wool, where a handful of human beings are trying to stay warm. Walter shifts slightly, adjusting his blanket where the wind pressed it in. His shoulder brushes Ethan's. The contact is brief, but it carries a quiet reassurance. Another heartbeat close by, another body sharing the same narrow pocket of warmth. The tent settles again. The lantern flickers once, then steadies. Ethan lets his breathing match the slow rhythm of the men around him. Each inhale and exhale joining the small, steady circle of sound inside the fragile shelter. Outside, the snow keeps falling, patient and sure, layering over the plains and the tents and the horses, until everything is softened into one pale shape. The storm continues its long sweep across Wyoming, indifferent to how many men lie under its sky. Inside this one tent, on this one night, Ethan Cole lies down beside Walter Hayes and the others, finding his place in the narrow gap that has been left for him. The wind moves along the canvas, counting softly in its own language, and for now, that is all that happens. The night begins. Night does not call anyone by name. It does not slow when footsteps fade, and it does not hurry when a lantern is dimmed. It simply continues, wide and unbroken, stretching across the high plains and into the folds of the distant mountains. Beyond the tents, the land holds its shape without effort. Low ridges rise and fall beneath the snow, their outlines softened, ancient and patient. The mountains to the west are barely visible now, reduced to darker shadows against a darker sky. They were here long before fences, before trails, before the ideas of shelter. They will remain long after the canvas rots and the stakes are pulled free. Snow moves steadily downward, thick flakes tumbling end over end. Some strike the tents and slide away. Others cling briefly to seams and folds, gathering in shallow ridges along the roof lines. The canvas does not resist. It only accepts the weight as it comes. Inside the tent, Ethan's breathing has slowed. He is not asleep, not fully. His thoughts drift without settling, passing through images of daylight. Horses shifting in the cold, the sound of leather creaking, the long white reach of the plains, then dissolving again into darkness. He does not notice the snow piling higher against the outer wall beside his shoulder. He does not feel the quiet pressure as the weight increases. The tent bears it all, indifferent, the way it always has. Walter lies still, his body arranged with practiced economy. Years of cold nights have taught him where to place his arms, how to angle his shoulders so the wind presses evenly instead of finding a seam. His face is turned slightly upward now, eyes closed, lashes pale against weathered skin. His thoughts, if he has any, do not cling to memory. He has learned to let them pass through like wind through tall grass. The snow keeps falling. Outside the tent, near the remnants of the fire, a dark shape shifts. Rook, the camp dog, lifts his head from his paws. He is an old cattle dog, grey-muzzled, with one ear permanently bent from an injury long ago. His coat is thick and coarse, mottled black and white, built to withstand weather without complaint. Rook has seen more winters than most of the men in the camp. He understands cold the way a creature understands hunger, not as something to fear, but as something to endure. Rook rises slowly, joints stiff, and turns once before settling again closer to the embers. The fire has burned down to a faint red glow, barely visible beneath a crust of ash. It offers no real warmth now, only the memory of it. Rook lowers his head, nose tucked beneath his tail, and closes his eyes. Snow dusts his back, collecting along his spine. He does not shake it off. The wind shifts direction. It moves down from the higher ground now, sliding between the tents instead of rushing straight across them. As it passes, it carries loose snow, lifting it into the air and pressing it against canvas and rope. The tents answer with soft sounds, fabric tightening, seams whispering, lines humming low. The wind does not linger. It does not pause to test strength or weakness. It moves on, tracing the camp's outline, and then dissolving into open space again. If the wind notices the men inside, it does not show it. The snow gathers along the tent roofs like a second layer of fabric, a pale blanket laid down without care. It does not shape itself for comfort. It does not seek balance. It falls where gravity takes it and stays until something stronger moves it away. Inside, Tom shifts once. A small movement of his shoulder. His breath stutters, then steadies. He turns his face deeper into his blanket, chasing warmth instinctively. He does not wake. Ben's leg twitches. A reflex more than a decision. His fingers curl and uncurl inside his gloves. Somewhere in his drifting thoughts, he may be remembering a stove back home, a kitchen light, a place where winter stayed outside the walls. The memory does not last. The cold pulls him back into the present without effort. The night remains unchanged. Farther off, beyond the reach of the lantern's glow, a fence line disappears beneath the snow. The posts stand at uneven intervals, their tops capped white. Wire hums faintly as the wind moves through it, a thin metallic note that rises and fades. The fence does not mark ownership here, so much as it marks intention. Proof that people once tried to draw lines across a land that does not recognize them. The mountains remain silent. Clouds thicken overhead, erasing the last suggestion of stars. The sky becomes a single, unbroken sheet of dark grey, low and heavy. Snow falls more densely now, flakes colliding and breaking apart as they descend. The sound changes slightly. Not louder, but fuller, as if the air itself has grown thick. Inside the tent, Ethan's breath deepens further. His body has begun the quiet work of conserving energy. Muscles loosen, then hold. Heat is pulled inward, away from fingers and toes, toward the core. His hands, tucked close to his chest, slowly lose their ache. His mind drifts again, this time without images, without edges. Walter exhales slowly. The sound is almost lost beneath the wind, but it carries a steady rhythm, a quiet counterpoint to the storm. He has lived long enough to know that the night does not respond to tension. Fighting it wastes strength. Accepting it changes nothing, but it costs less. Snow presses against the tent wall beside him, creating a shallow curve in the canvas. The fabric holds. The ropes hold. The stakes, frozen deep into the ground, do not move. Snow continues to fall on the tent, layer upon layer, building a weight that the men inside will not notice until morning. It settles on hats left outside, on saddles wrapped in oilcloth, on the backs of horses standing head down in the lee of the wind. Each flake lands without ceremony. If the night is watching, it does so without judgment. If it is counting, it counts only in time. Inside the tent, the small circle of warmth holds. 4 bodies breathe. Wool traps what little heat it can. Canvas bends and endures. Nothing dramatic happens. No decision is made. No danger announces itself. The snow keeps falling, indifferent and complete, laying its quiet blanket over everything beneath the Wyoming sky. And the night goes on. The tents begin to complain, long before anyone inside thinks to move. It starts as a low, tightening sound, canvas drawing taut as the wind leans into it, then loosening again as the pressure passes. Rope answers with a dull hum. Wooden poles creak softly, not in pain, but in acknowledgement. An old structure speaking the language of stress and balance. No one reaches for a knot. No one lifts a hand to adjust a seam. Inside Ethan's tent, the men remain where they are. The space has settled into a fragile equilibrium. And everyone knows, without needing to say it, that touching anything now would only invite colder air inside. Repairs are for daylight. Night is for endurance. The wind grows steadier, no longer gusting in sharp bursts, but pressing with long, deliberate force. The canvas bows inward and holds, its surface rippling like a stretched drum skin. Snow slides down the outside walls in small avalanches, thumping softly at the base of the tent. Ethan feels the movement through the ground more than the air. Each push of wind sends a faint vibration through the frozen earth, up through the stakes, and into the place where his hip meets the canvas. The sound is constant now, a low, restless rhythm that never quite resolves. Across the narrow aisle of packed snow between tents, another shelter shifts more dramatically. This tent belongs to Jacob Miller. Jacob is younger than the others. 22, maybe 23. Tall but not yet filled out, his frame still lean in a way that suggests speed rather than strength. His hair is light brown, worn a little longer than practical, and it curls at the edges when damp. His face is open, almost boyish, with eyes that move quickly, taking in more than he lets on. Around the fire, Jacob talks more than most. He asks questions, tells stories about places he has never been back to since leaving home. He laughs easily, but the laugh always fades a second too fast. This is his first winter like this. Inside his tent, Jacob lies stiff beneath his blankets, every muscle alert. The canvas wall near his shoulder snaps inward again, closer this time, brushing the brim of his hat. He flinches before he can stop himself. The sound of the tent is different from the open wind. It feels closer, more personal. Each creak seems aimed directly at him, each tightening rope like a warning delivered in a language he does not yet understand. He pulls his blanket higher, tucking the wool tight beneath his chin, then draws it farther, covering his mouth. His breath fogs the air in front of his face, dampening the fabric. He shifts his shoulders, trying to curl into a smaller shape, as if making himself compact might make the tent stronger. Another creak, louder. Jacob freezes, listening. For a moment, he imagines the stakes loosening, one by one, slipping free from the frozen ground. He imagines the canvas tearing, the roof collapsing inward under the weight of snow. He imagines standing up in the storm, hands numb, trying to hold fabric that refuses to be held. The thought tightens his chest. He does not call out. He does not move to wake the man beside him. Pride, or perhaps embarrassment, keeps him silent. Everyone else seems to accept the noise as inevitable. To complain would be to admit that he expected more from the tent, that he believed it was meant to protect him, rather than merely delay the cold. The wind presses again, harder now. The tent wall bows inward until it nearly touches his shoulder, then slowly returns to its place. Snow thuds softly against the canvas roof, sliding downward in sheets. Jacob swallows and pulls the blanket even tighter. For the first time since arriving at the camp, he understands something clearly and without comfort. The tent is not a refuge. It is not a shelter in the way walls are shelter, or doors. It is a thin agreement between human effort and the weather. A pause, nothing more. The night could take it back at any moment. Across the camp, Another tent answers the wind with its own complaints. Then another. The sounds overlap, forming a low, uneven chorus of fabric and rope and wood. None of it rises to the level of danger. None of it quiets enough to forget. Inside Ethan's tent, the men remain silent. Walter opens his eyes briefly, though he does not move his head. He listens, counting the intervals between the loudest creaks, feeling the pattern of pressure through the ground. After a moment, he closes his eyes again. The sound tells him nothing new. The tent is holding. That is enough. Tom shifts slightly, adjusting his weight. The movement sends a soft rustle through his blankets. Then stillness returns. Ben's breathing changes pace, quickening for a few seconds before slowing again, his body reacting without waking. Ethan stays where he is, one shoulder warm from Walter's back, the other chilled by the canvas wall. He does not think about the tent failing. He does not think about fixing anything. He focuses instead on the sounds, letting them pass through him rather than pressing against them. The creaks and hums become part of the night's rhythm, no more threatening than the wind itself. Outside, Rook lifts his head again, ears pricking at the change in sound. He stands this time, shaking snow from his back in a slow, deliberate motion. The flakes scatter briefly, then settle again. He circles once, nose low to the ground, then chooses a spot closer to the leeward side of the cook tent and lies down again, positioning his body instinctively where the wind's force breaks. Rook understands shelters differently than people do. He does not expect them to last. He expects only that they will reduce the wind enough to survive the next hour. The wind eases slightly, then returns from a new angle. This time, it catches the long side of Jacob's tent squarely. The canvas snaps tight with a sharp report, loud enough to make him suck in a breath. He presses his forehead into his blanket and squeezes his eyes shut. No one comes. No one speaks. After a few moments, the tent settles again. The sound softens, returning to its earlier rhythm. Jacob's breathing slows, though his muscles remain tense, coiled as if ready to move. He listens carefully now, not for catastrophe, but for reassurance. Each creak that resolves without tearing becomes proof. Small, grudging proof that the structure will last a little longer. Around him, the other men remain still. Their silence is not indifference. It is familiarity. They have learned that attention does not strengthen canvas, and fear does not stop wind. Snow continues to collect along the roof seams, deepening the pale ridges. The weight presses evenly now, smoothing some of the sharper sounds into duller ones. The tent, altered by the burden, finds a new balance. In Ethan's tent, the noise changes too. Lower, steadier. He notices the shift without opening his eyes. The night has moved into another phase, and the camp has moved with it. Jacob loosens his grip on the blanket just slightly. He does not relax, not fully, but something in him adjusts. He has learned his first quiet lesson of the winter. Safety here is relative, temporary, earned 1 hour at a time. The tent is not a promise. It is a pause. The wind passes again, softer now, and the tents answer with fewer complaints. Still, no one rises. No one repairs. No one speaks. The camp holds its breath together, wrapped in canvas and wool, waiting for the night to continue on without them. The weight of the blankets settles slowly, as if the wool itself is deciding how much of the night it will accept. They are heavy with use, thick with years of smoke and weather, and faintly damp where the day's cold never fully released its grip. The smell rises gently as bodies warm the fabric. Old campfires, scorched coffee, wet leather, and something deeper that belongs only to long winters spent outdoors. Ethan becomes aware of the bedroll in layers. First, the pressure beneath his hip, hard and unyielding, where the ground refuses to soften. Then the uneven warmth above him, trapped imperfectly by wool that has lost some of its loft over time. Finally, the faint chill that sneaks in through seams and folds, testing for weakness. He exhales and shifts. The movement is careful, deliberate. Ethan draws his knees up slightly, curling inward to conserve heat, and inches closer toward Walter's back. It is not a conscious decision at first, more a response than a choice. His body recognizes warmth the way it recognizes water after thirst. The space between them narrows. Walter's blanket brushes Ethan's sleeve, and for a moment, Ethan pauses, listening for any sign of discomfort. There is none. Walter does not speak. He does not open his eyes. But a second later, almost imperceptibly, Walter adjusts his position. He slides his shoulder forward by an inch, perhaps less, redistributing his weight so their backs align more evenly. The movement is small, practiced, and silent. Walter Hayes has slept beside other men in worse conditions than this. He knows the difference between intrusion and necessity. Years ago, before his beard turned white, he learned that warmth shared is not a weakness, but a resource. That lesson was carved into him one winter, when a younger rider nearly froze before morning because pride kept him distant. Walter never forgot the sound of that man's teeth chattering, nor how close it came to stopping. Tonight, Walter shifts without waking, because his body remembers even when his mind does not. Ethan feels the change immediately. The contact is subtle. 2 layers of wool between skin and skin. But the effect is real. Heat gathers in the narrow channel where their backs nearly touch. The draft that had been creeping along Ethan's spine weakens. He relaxes by degrees. The wool beneath him crackles softly as he settles, fibers compressing further. The blanket closest to the ground is the dampest, holding on to cold with quiet persistence. Ethan can feel it pressing upward, drawing warmth from his hip and thigh. He adjusts again, this time pulling a folded edge beneath his waist, creating a thin buffer. It is not comfortable, but it is better. Around them, the tent remains restless. Canvas flexes with each shift of the wind, but the sound is less startling now. The men inside have learned its voice. Each creak is familiar, each strain predictable. The night has not grown kinder, but they have grown more accustomed to its weight. Across the camp, in a smaller tent near the supply sled, Sarah Whitcomb lies awake. Sarah is not a rider. She is the camp's cook and quartermaster, a woman in her early 40s with a tall, narrow frame and shoulders made strong by years of lifting water buckets and sacks of grain. Her hair, once a deep chestnut, has begun to grey at the temples, usually tied back in a tight braid to keep it from catching fire sparks. Her face is long and calm, marked by lines that speak more of concentration than age. Sarah's manner is steady, almost reserved. She speaks plainly, wastes no words, and keeps her emotions carefully ordered. That restraint was shaped years ago when she lost her husband to a sudden illness during a winter drive. Since then, she has learned to keep moving forward without expecting comfort from the season or the world. Tonight, Sarah lies wrapped in her own bedroll, one arm tucked beneath her pillow, listening to the tents complain. She knows the sounds well. She knows when to worry and when not to. This night falls firmly into the second category. She reaches up once, adjusting the edge of her blanket where snow has melted through the canvas and dampened the fabric. She does not rise. Like the others, she knows better than to invite the cold further in. Outside her tent, snow piles along the base like a low wall, insulating even as it threatens to weigh the structure down. The snow does not distinguish between tents, people, or supplies. It falls with the same patience everywhere. Back inside Ethan's tent, Ben stirs. He turns onto his back, breath quickening for a moment as the cold finds his face. His hand fumbles near his chest, searching for the edge of his blanket. He pulls it higher, then tucks his chin down. His hat slips, shadowing his eyes. Ben is dreaming lightly now, caught between wakefulness and rest. In his dream, he is walking across open ground without snow, the earth firm beneath his boots. The memory brings a faint, unconscious smile to his face before the cold nudges him back toward stillness. Tom remains unmoving, his bulk a quiet anchor near the tent flap. The draft that enters there finds him first, but he has learned to sleep through it. His blanket is wrapped tight, edges sealed with practiced efficiency. Ethan closes his eyes. The smell of smoke in the wool reminds him of another camp years earlier, another winter that seemed endless at the time. He does not linger on the memory. His thoughts drift instead to simple sensations. The sound of Walter's breathing, the muted thump of snow sliding from the roof, the steady pressure of the ground. He adjusts one last time, inching his boots slightly farther from the tent wall, angling them toward the center where the air is marginally warmer. The movement sends a faint ripple through the blankets. Walter responds without waking. His back presses a fraction closer. Not enough to crowd, just enough to close the gap. The warmth between them deepens, a shared pocket shaped by years of quiet understanding. Walter's face remains relaxed, his breathing unchanged. This is how bedrolls work in winter. They are not beds in the proper sense. They do not cradle or comfort. They simply reduce exposure. They draw a line, thin, imperfect, between human bodies and the cold earth. Outside, Rook shifts again, curling tighter against himself. Snow dusts his muzzle. He sighs once, deeply, then grows still. The wind eases for a moment, just long enough for the tent to relax its frame. The canvas slackens slightly, ropes loosening their song. The night does not retreat. It only pauses. Inside the bedrolls, heat gathers slowly, unevenly, enough to take the edge off discomfort. Ethan's breathing lengthens. His shoulders drop, the ache in his hip dulls into a distant throb that no longer demands attention. Walter's presence is steady at his back, a reminder that the night is shared. No one speaks. No one moves to fix what cannot be fixed. The bedrolls hold as well as they can. And for now, that is enough. The fire is small, deliberately so. It burns low at the center of the camp, its flames thin and uneven, no higher than a man's hand when fully awake. The light it gives is weak, a shallow orange that barely reaches the nearest tent wall before dissolving into darkness. It does not chase the night back. It does not soften the cold. It simply exists, marking a point in the snow where human presence has not yet vanished. The wind moves around it carefully, as if testing how much it can take. Each gust leans in, bending the flame sideways, stretching it thin until it looks ready to break. The fire answers by shrinking, pulling inward, retreating into itself. Ash lifts briefly, then settles again. No sparks leap. There is no drama here, only endurance measured in seconds. Jacob Hale watches the fire from his bedroll. Jacob is in his early 30s, tall and narrow through the shoulders, with a build shaped by long rides rather than strength. His face carries a permanent look of watchfulness, sharpened by winters spent expecting things to go wrong when no one was looking. His dark hair is cropped short, more from habit than style, and his beard grows unevenly, showing patches of grey he pretends not to notice. Jacob's nature is quiet but alert. He speaks rarely, and when he does, it is usually to ask questions rather than give answers. Years ago, he lost a younger brother during a sudden storm when a fire failed to hold through the night. Since then, Jacob has learned not to trust warmth that looks too confident. Now, he stares at the flame, the way one watches something already preparing to leave. The fire shifts again, bowing low under another gust. Jacob's jaw tightens slightly. He does not move to feed it. Not yet. He knows better than to waste fuel too early. The night is long. The fire must last longer than comfort. Across the open space between tents, Sarah rises. She moves carefully, slipping out from her bedroll with practiced efficiency. Boots already on, coat drawn close. Her posture is upright despite the cold. Her movements economical. The fire reflects faintly in her eyes as she approaches, casting brief highlights across her face. Sarah kneels beside the fire and holds her hands above it, palms angled inward. She does not warm them fully. She only takes enough heat to remind her fingers how to bend without pain. Then she adjusts the coals with a short stick, nudging them closer together to concentrate what little warmth remains. She adds one small piece of fuel. No more. The fire responds, lifting slightly, breathing in the offering. The light brightens just enough to touch the nearest tent flap. Sarah watches until the flame steadies, then withdraws, satisfied. Jacob sees the exchange and exhales. The fire's purpose is not warmth. Everyone here understands that. It exists to mark continuity, to say that this place is still occupied, that the night, for all its weight, has not erased the camp. Inside Ethan's tent, the light filters through canvas seams, turning the interior briefly, amber. The glow reaches Ethan's boots, then fades. He does not open his eyes, but his breathing changes, deepening slightly. Somewhere beneath thought, his body registers the presence of flame and relaxes by a fraction. Walter does not stir. His breathing remains slow and even, each exhale long enough to fog the air inside the tent before dissipating. Walter has learned to sleep without needing reassurance. Fire, for him, is useful, but not essential. He has lived through nights when it failed completely. Ben wakes briefly when the fire flares, eyes opening just long enough to register colour in the darkness. He smiles faintly, then rolls onto his side and sinks back into shallow sleep. Outside the tent, Rook lifts his head. The dog's ears flick once toward the sound of shifting coals. His nose twitches, catching the scent of smoke on the wind. He rises halfway, shakes snow from his coat, then lowers himself again, curling tighter. The fire does not concern him. As long as the men remain, he will remain. The wind returns, stronger this time. It sweeps across the camp in a long, steady push, pressing against tents, flattening the fire until it is nearly extinguished. For a moment, the flame thins to a trembling line of light. Jacob's hand tightens on the edge of his blanket. Then the fire pulls itself back together. The coals glow brighter, sheltering the flame at their center. It survives, diminished but intact. Jacob releases his grip. The fire has passed another test. Sarah retreats to her tent, movements unhurried. She does not look back. She trusts the fire to do what it can. If it fails, they will deal with that when it happens. Time stretches. The fire settles into a steady, fragile rhythm. Its light pulses gently as fuel shifts and settles. Shadows move across the snow in slow, uncertain patterns. The tents seem to breathe, canvas expanding and contracting with each change in the wind. No one speaks. The fire does not invite conversation. It is too small for gathering, too weak for comfort. It belongs to the quiet hours when words feel unnecessary. Jacob continues to watch. His gaze softens, not from hope, but from acceptance. He understands now that the fire is not leaving. It is not staying either. It is simply passing time, the same way they are. Ethan drifts deeper into rest, his thoughts loosening, pulled apart by exhaustion rather than peace. His dreams, if they come, are brief and shallow. He remains aware of the fire, without knowing why. Walter shifts once, adjusting his shoulder, sealing a gap in the blankets. He does not wake. The fire dips again, then steadies. Outside the camp, snow continues to fall, indifferent to flame and flesh alike. It settles around the fire pit, absorbing light, softening contrast. The orange glow becomes more muted, more contained. The fire does not protest. It accepts its limits, and in doing so, it fulfills its purpose. The cold does not arrive all at once. It seeps upward, patient and methodical, rising from the frozen earth as if the ground itself were breathing slowly beneath the camp. Long after the wind has found its rhythm and the fire has settled into its narrow glow, the earth continues its quiet work, drawing heat away, grain by grain. Ethan feels it first along his lower back. Not a sharp pain, not even discomfort, just a steady awareness. A dull insistence that spreads outward from where bone and muscle meet the ground. The wool beneath him has been pressed thin by hours of weight. Its fibers, once full of trapped air, now lie flattened, offering little resistance. Heat moves downward, slipping through layers meant to slow it, and disappears into the soil below. He shifts his hips slightly, testing whether the ache will ease. It does not. It simply relocates, creeping into his side, then settling into his shoulder when he turns again. There is no perfect position, only variations of the same truth. Walter lies close, their backs still aligned, sharing what warmth they can. Even so, the cold from below works independently of closeness. It finds its way into joints and muscle, indifferent to companionship. Walter knows this well. His body registers the chill in familiar places. Hips first, then the long line of his spine, then the shoulder pressed nearest the canvas wall. He does not move. Experience has taught him that constant shifting wastes energy without solving the problem. Better to choose a position, accept the discomfort, and let the body adapt. He loosens his jaw slightly, allowing tension to drain away, and slows his breathing. The ache dulls, becoming background noise. Across the tent, Ben turns onto his stomach, then back again, restless. His shoulder brushes the frozen canvas wall, and he hisses softly through his teeth before pulling away. He tucks one arm beneath his chest, the other under his hat, trying to create a pocket of warmth where none truly exists. Tom mutters once in his sleep, a word lost beneath the wind, and then goes quiet again. His bulk helps him here. More mass holds heat longer. Even so, the cold claims its share. Outside, the wind shifts. It does not stop. It simply chooses a new path. The sound of the tents changes immediately. Where before the canvas strained in long, even pulls, it now rattles in shorter bursts, the ropes snapping and relaxing in quick succession. The noise sharpens, taking on a higher pitch. Seams that were quiet before begin to whisper. Poles answer with a different creak, as if surprised by the change. Ethan notices the difference without opening his eyes. The new sound carries through the ground differently, sending faint vibrations through the stakes. The pattern is unfamiliar, and for a moment his body tenses in response. Walter's breathing remains steady. The earth beneath them does not care which way the wind blows. It continues its slow draw, pulling warmth downward with quiet efficiency. The frozen soil is dense here, packed hard by weeks of cold. It accepts heat without resistance, storing nothing, giving nothing back. In another tent, Jacob lies awake, very still. The change in sound has caught his attention. The sharper rattling unsettles him more than the earlier, heavier groans. It feels less predictable, as if the night has changed its mind about how it intends to behave. He presses his palm flat against the ground beneath his blanket, curious despite himself. The cold shocks him. He jerks his hand back instinctively, fingers stinging as if he had touched ice directly. He tucks his hand beneath his armpit, breathing faster now. The ground is colder than he expected, colder than the wear, colder than the wind. He had not understood that before. Not fully. Jacob's thoughts race briefly, searching for solutions. More blanket beneath him. Too late. Move closer to the fire. Impossible from inside the tent. He shifts his weight, curling tighter. Knees drawn up toward his chest, trying to reduce contact with the earth. The relief is minimal. For the first time, Jacob understands that the ground is not neutral. It is an active force, working against him with steady resolve. The tent may hold back wind. The fire may mark presence. But the earth below is relentless. He lies still, heart slowing again, accepting the lesson. Across the camp, Sarah wakes briefly when the wind changes pitch. She does not sit up. She knows this sound too. It means the pressure has shifted, not increased. She adjusts her bedroll slightly, folding one edge beneath her hip to add thickness. The maneuver cost a burst of cold air inside her blankets, but she tolerates it, knowing the trade is worth it. Sarah's body has learned these calculations over years of similar nights. She no longer resents them. Each adjustment is simply part of the process, like measuring grain or counting supplies. The cold is another variable to manage. Outside her tent, Rook lifts his head and turns it into the wind, ears flattening briefly. The new direction brings different scents. Snow, horse, the faint tang of iron from frozen earth. He shifts his position again, rotating his body so his back faces the wind, and his belly presses into a shallow hollow he has scraped in the snow. The hollow is small, but it helps. Even animals understand the ground's power. The wind continues its new pattern, sliding along the camp's edge, then curling inward between tents. The canvas answers with sharper sounds, a restless clatter that ebbs and flows. Snow dislodges from roofs and slides down in sudden, muffled rushes, piling against the lower walls. Inside Ethan's tent, the noise fades into familiarity once more. His body has adjusted to the new rhythm. The cold from below remains, but his awareness of it softens. He focuses instead on breathing. Slow in, slower out, letting his muscles loosen despite the ache. He draws his shoulder a fraction closer to Walter, not seeking more warmth so much as reassurance. Walter responds by shifting his weight subtly, redistributing pressure so the cold eases from one point and settles into another. It is not comfort exactly. It is management. The ground claims its share regardless. Time stretches again. Minutes pass without distinction. The cold from below becomes a constant presence, no longer sharp enough to command attention, but never absent. It defines the night more than the wind now, more than the fire. It is the quiet baseline against which all other sensations are measured. Ben finally stills, his breathing evening out as exhaustion overrides discomfort. Tom remains asleep. Jacob lies awake longer, staring into darkness, feeling the earth beneath him, and knowing he will remember this sensation long after the night ends. Walter exhales slowly, the sound nearly lost in the tense shifting noises. He has reached a stage of acceptance that only comes after many nights like this one. The cold from the ground is not an enemy. It is a condition. Outside, the wind holds its new course. The tents continue to answer, their voices altered but steady. Snow keeps falling, filling the space between sound and silence. The earth does not change. It keeps drawing warmth downward, patient as ever, reminding everyone above it that shelter has limits, and endurance begins where comfort ends. Ethan turns onto his other side without fully waking. The movement begins deep in his hips, a slow decision made by muscle and bone rather than thought. The cold has settled too long against one side of his body, dull and persistent, and his instincts respond before his mind can form a reason. Wool shifts softly beneath him, compressed fibers releasing with a faint crackle as he rolls. Almost at the same moment, Walter turns as well. There is no signal, no whispered word, no conscious coordination. Walter's body moves with the quiet certainty of habit, adjusting its position in response to the smallest change in balance beside him. He rolls in the opposite direction, mirroring Ethan's movement so that the narrow space between them remains intact. Their backs still aligned, their shared warmth preserved. The timing is exact enough to feel intentional, though it is not. This is something Walter learned decades ago, sleeping beside men who were strangers one night and lifelines the next. Bodies communicate in pressure and temperature, in the subtle language of weight and absence. When one shifts, the other follows. Not to cling, but to maintain equilibrium. Ethan feels the contact re-establish itself and exhales, unaware he had been holding his breath. The cold that had been pressing into his shoulder now migrates, spreading along his back in a different pattern. It is no warmer, not truly, but the change is enough to bring brief relief. His knees draw in slightly, then relax again. He settles. Walter's back presses closer for a second, then stills. His breathing remains slow and even, each breath measured, economical. He does not open his eyes. He does not need to. His body has already completed the calculation. The tent responds to their movement with a low rustle, then quiets again. Outside, the wind maintains its steady course, no longer shifting direction, no longer testing the camp. It has chosen its path for now. Across the tent, Ben stirs at the sound. He turns once, blanket slipping off his shoulder. Cold air brushes his skin, and he hisses softly. Half awake, he reaches for the edge of the wool, fumbles, then finds it, and pulls it back into place. His movements are clumsy, unpracticed. He has not yet learned to move slowly enough in the cold. Ben's face is drawn tight, even in sleep. Brows faintly furrowed. He is young, but the night has begun to carve its lessons into him. Tomorrow, he will remember none of this consciously. Later, much later, he will remember it with his body. Tom does not move at all. His breathing remains deep and steady, his mass holding warmth more stubbornly than the others. He has always slept through discomfort, as if his body simply refuses to register it once a certain threshold has been crossed. Outside the tent, the snow continues its patient accumulation. It settles differently now, guided by the wind's new rhythm, forming shallow drifts along one side of each shelter. The weight presses down evenly, altering the tension of the canvas just enough to change its voice. The sound inside the tent softens. Ethan notices this distantly, the way one notices a change in light through closed eyelids. The sharper rattles fade, replaced by a low, steady groan that feels less urgent. The tent has found another balance point, just as the bodies inside have. In another tent nearby, Jacob lies awake, listening. He has turned over twice already, each time chasing warmth that never quite arrives. Now he lies on his back, staring up at the dark curve of canvas above him. Breath visible in the air, he feels the ground beneath him, unyielding and cold, and the weight of the blanket pressing down from above. He considers turning again. The thought of movement brings a flash of resistance, of cold air rushing in, of warmth lost and not easily regained. He stays still instead, focusing on his breathing, counting slow exhales. He remembers watching Ethan and Walter earlier in the season, how they always seemed to settle without fuss, how their movements were small and synchronized. Jacob does not yet know how to do that. He turns anyway, slowly, carefully, trying to imitate what he has observed. The blanket shifts, a little heat escapes, and then his body settles again. The change is marginal, but it is something. He draws his knees closer and waits. Outside Jacob's tent, Rook lifts his head as the snow shifts against the canvas. He turns in place, circles once, then lies down again, positioning himself so his spine presses against a mound of packed snow. The snow holds the shape, reflecting a small amount of his body heat back toward him. Rook sighs and closes his eyes. Animals do not overthink warmth. They find it where it exists and stop there. Back in Ethan's tent, the space between him and Walter has grown warmer by degrees. The heat is not dramatic. It does not push the cold away. It merely creates a thin zone where discomfort is dulled enough to be ignored. Ethan's thoughts drift in and out, shallow and unformed. He is aware of Walter beside him, of the steady rise and fall of another man's breath so close that it seems to set the pace for his own. There is a quiet comfort in that rhythm, a reminder that the night is not being faced alone. Walter's face remains relaxed, mouth slightly open now as his breathing deepens. His body has moved beyond conscious adjustment, entering the long middle hours of rest, where awareness fades and instinct takes over entirely. Years ago, Walter would have stayed lighter, more alert. Age has taught him that vigilance has limits. Trusting the night, within reason, is part of surviving it. Ethan turns his head slightly, pressing his cheek deeper into the wool. The fabric smells of smoke and damp earth, familiar and grounding. His shoulder aches where the ground draws heat relentlessly away, but the ache no longer demands attention. It has become part of the background, like the wind or the weight of the blanket. He reaches a hand back unconsciously, fingers curling into the fold of his own coat. The movement brings his knuckles briefly into contact with Walter's blanket. The contact is brief, accidental, but it lingers in sensation longer than it should. Walter shifts a fraction in response, not pulling away, simply accommodating. Their backs touch again more fully, heat shared without acknowledgement. This is not intimacy. It is not dependence. It is survival, practiced so often. It has lost its meaning. The tent holds. Outside, The wind lessens for a moment, as if pausing to rest. Snow falls more gently now, flakes descending almost straight down. The silence deepens, broken only by the soft sounds of breathing and the distant creak of frozen trees. Inside, Ethan finally slips into something closer to sleep. It is not deep. It is not complete. But it is enough. Walter remains where he is, turned in the opposite direction, their movements now finished for the hour. If one turns again later, the other will follow. They always do. Two bodies, one older, one younger, have found a temporary balance in the cold, drawn together not by affection or choice, but by the simple physics of warmth. The night continues around them, indifferent and vast. Inside the tent, the turning is done. For now, this night is like the one before it, not in detail, but in shape. The cold settles into the camp with the same patient certainty. The wind keeps its chosen course, neither strengthening nor easing enough to matter. Snow continues to fall, not in dramatic sheets, but in steady accumulation, as if time itself were sifting downward grain by grain. Nothing announces itself. Nothing resolves. Inside the tent, the bodies that turned earlier have grown still again. Ethan remains on his side. Breath slow, the narrow seam of shared warmth with Walter, holding steady. The ache along his shoulder has dulled into a familiar presence, something he no longer actively resists. His thoughts move in shallow loops, never landing long enough to become memory. He is aware of the night without engaging it, the way one hears rain while half asleep, and does not bother to count the drops. Walter lies motionless, his body arranged exactly as it needs to be. He has reached the part of the night where effort ceases. The small adjustments are done. Whatever comfort is possible has already been claimed. What remains will simply be endured. Across the tent, Tom exhales deeply and rolls his head a fraction to the side. The movement loosens the brim of his hat, letting it slip lower over his eyes. He does not wake. His sleep is heavy, unrefined, built on long days of work rather than quiet rest. The cold has already taken what it will from him for the moment. Ben stirs again, less dramatically this time. He flexes his fingers once inside his gloves, then lets them rest. His breathing evens out. The earlier tension drains from his shoulders, replaced by the dull acceptance that comes when the body decides resistance costs too much. Outside, the camp holds its shape. The tents stand where they stood an hour ago, their outlines softened by snow. The fire remains low, its light barely visible now beneath ash and drifting flakes. Rook lies curled tight, nose tucked beneath his tail, body turned so the wind slides over his back rather than into his chest. The horses stand quietly in the lee of a ridge, heads lowered, tails to the wind. They do not move unless they must. Time stretches without distinction. There is no clear marker for how long the night has lasted or how much remains. The dark feels the same as it did earlier, and it will feel the same later. The mind, starved of change, stops trying to measure it. In another tent, Jacob lies awake, staring into the dim curve of canvas. His breath fogs the air in slow, steady pulses. Earlier, each sound demanded attention. Now the noises blend together. The hum of rope, the distant creak of wood, the soft thud of snow sliding down fabric. None of it signals danger. None of it promises relief. Jacob's body is tired in a new way. Not the sharp exhaustion of overwork, but the deeper fatigue that comes from sustained discomfort. His muscles have stopped bracing. His jaw, clenched earlier, loosens. The cold is still there, pressing up from the ground. But it no longer feels personal. It has become part of the environment, like darkness or gravity. He thinks, briefly, of the older men in camp, of Walter's stillness, of Sarah's measured movement, of the way no one complained when the wind changed or the fire dipped. Earlier in the season, Jacob had mistaken that silence for indifference, even pride. Now he understands it differently. Complaining would not alter the night. Speaking would not warm the ground. Worry would not shorten the hours. The realization settles quietly, without drama. It does not make the cold easier. It simply removes the friction of fighting what cannot be changed. Jacob exhales slowly and lets his gaze soften. His thoughts drift, not toward comfort or home, but toward neutrality. He stops asking how much longer. He stops imagining what morning might bring. The night, repeating itself moment by moment, requires no anticipation. Outside, snow continues to layer itself over the camp. It fills shallow depressions, smooths edges, erases footprints made earlier in the evening. The ground becomes more uniform, more anonymous. If someone were to arrive now, they would not know how many people slept beneath the canvas, or how long they had been there. The mountains remain unseen, their presence felt rather than observed. They do not shift. They do not react. They simply occupy their place beneath the sky, as they have through countless nights like this one. Inside Ethan's tent, the rhythm of breathing synchronizes without effort. 4 men inhale and exhale at slightly different intervals, but the effect is cohesive, a low, collective sound that fills the space more effectively than any fire could. The air grows warmer by a fraction, then holds. Ethan's awareness fades further. His thoughts no longer form images. They dissolve into sensation. Pressure, warmth, weight. He's not asleep in any deep sense, but he is no longer awake either. The night passes through him without resistance. Walter remains steady, his body conserving energy with practiced efficiency. He has lived long enough to know that the night will repeat itself, whether he pays attention or not. His role is not to mark its passing, but to outlast it. Sarah wakes briefly when a soft rush of snow slides down the side of her tent. She does not open her eyes. She adjusts her breathing, tucks her chin slightly deeper into her collar, and lets the sound fade. She has reached the same place as the others, a quiet agreement with the night to do no more than necessary. Rook lifts his head once, ears twitching, then settles again. The movement is small, reflexive. He does not bark. There is nothing to announce. The wind holds steady. The tents creak in familiar patterns. The fire dims further, now little more than a suggestion of warmth beneath ash and snow. The camp does not change. It simply continues. This night resembles the one before it in the way all long nights resemble each other, not through sameness of events, but through sameness of endurance. There are no milestones here, no progress to track. Each minute is complete on its own. Jacob closes his eyes. He does not expect sleep to come. If it does, it will arrive quietly and leave just as quietly. He no longer waits for it. He lets the night repeat itself, over and over, without comment. Inside the tent, the older bodies have already learned this lesson. They no longer measure the night by discomfort or hope. They let it unfold, knowing it will exhaust itself eventually. Outside, snow keeps falling. The ground keeps drawing warmth. The wind keeps its path. Nothing new happens. Nothing needs to. The night repeats itself. And in that repetition, it loses its power to surprise. Sleep arrives without ceremony. It does not announce itself or deepen gradually. It simply slips in, unnoticed, when exhaustion finally outweighs awareness. Ethan sleeps for perhaps an hour, maybe less. Time has lost its edges, and the night offers no markers to measure it by. One moment, he is aware of the wool beneath him and the steady warmth at his back. And the next, his thoughts loosen and scatter, dissolving into a shallow, drifting rest. His sleep is thin. It carries no dreams, no images. It is closer to absence than to rest, a temporary suspension of effort. His body takes advantage of it immediately, slowing his breathing, easing the tension in his shoulders, letting his weight settle more fully into the ground. The ground responds in kind. Cold continues to rise, persistent and patient. It presses upward into Ethan's hip and lower back, then spreads outward, claiming warmth wherever it finds it. The wool beneath him, already flattened, offers little resistance. Heat drains away unnoticed at first. Walter sleeps too, though his sleep is lighter, shaped by years of listening, even while resting. His breathing deepens, then evens out, each inhale drawn slow and careful, each exhale long enough to fog the air behind him. He does not dream either. His rest exists in the narrow space between full sleep and awareness, a place he knows well. Across the tent, Tom snores softly, a low rhythmic sound that rises and falls with his chest. It is not loud enough to disturb anyone. Instead, it becomes part of the background, another steady noise folded into the night. Ben sleeps unevenly. His brow furrows, then smooths. His fingers twitch once, as if reaching for something just out of reach. He exhales sharply, then settles again. For a time, all of them sleep. Their breaths mingle in the confined space, warming the air by degrees too small to measure, but large enough to matter. Each exhale adds moisture, softening the dryness of the cold. The tent fills with the quiet sound of shared respiration. 4 separate rhythms overlapping, aligning, drifting apart, then aligning again. In the darkness, the sound is intimate without being personal. It is simply evidence of life continuing. Outside, the wind holds steady. Snow keeps falling. The night does not pause for their rest. Ethan wakes suddenly. There is no sound to wake him, no movement, no external disturbance. The cold finds him from below, sharp now where it had been dull before. It grips his hip and shoulder at once, sending a brief shock through his body. His eyes open, breath catching before he can stop it. For a moment, he does not know where he is. Then sensation returns in layers. The weight of the blanket, the press of Walter's back, the low groan of the tent, the muted hiss of wind outside. He exhales slowly, forcing his breathing to settle. The cold remains. He shifts his leg slightly, testing whether the ache will ease. It does not. It simply relocates, blooming into his thigh. He curls his knees closer to his chest, drawing the blanket tighter around his shoulders. The movement sends a ripple through the wool. Walter stirs in response, not waking fully, but adjusting just enough to maintain contact. His back presses closer, sharing warmth without intention. His breathing changes for a few seconds, then returns to its steady rhythm. Ethan closes his eyes again, hoping to reclaim the shallow rest he lost. It does not come. The cold has sharpened his awareness. His thoughts begin to drift, not toward worry or fear, but toward observation. He notices the way his breath sounds louder now, how each inhale feels colder than the last. He notices the stiffness in his fingers, the faint ache in his jaw, where he has been clenching it unconsciously. He relaxes his jaw deliberately and exhales. Across the tent, Ben wakes too. He turns onto his side, breath quick, then stills. His eyes remain open, staring into the darkness. He listens to the sounds around him. The breathing, the canvas, the distant wind. His body aches in unfamiliar ways. Cold pressing into joints he did not know could hurt like this. He waits, hoping sleep will return on its own. It does not. Ben pulls his blanket higher, covering his mouth and nose, breathing into the wool to trap warmth. The fabric dampens with moisture almost immediately. He does not care. Warmth now is worth discomfort later. Tom shifts again, his snore breaking off mid-breath. He smacks his lips once, then settles back into deeper sleep, oblivious to the cold's renewed advance. Outside, Sarah wakes briefly, sensing the same change. She draws her blanket tighter around her shoulders and tucks her feet closer together. She does not sit up. She knows this moment. The one where the body wakes not from noise, but from temperature. It passes if handled correctly. She slows her breathing and lets her muscles loosen rather than tighten. After a few minutes, she drifts back into light sleep. Rook lifts his head, ears flicking. He shifts his weight, pressing his belly more firmly into the hollow beneath him. The snow there has compacted and hardened, reflecting a trace of his body heat back toward him. Satisfied, he lowers his head again. Inside Ethan's tent, the air grows thick with breath. The overlapping rhythms of respiration fill the space, creating a low, continuous sound that seems to pulse with the tent's movements. Warm air rises, meets the cold canvas roof, and sinks again. Moisture clings to fabric and hair and wool. Ethan listens to it, anchoring himself in the sound. He matches his breathing to Walter's again, drawing each inhale slowly, extending or each exhale. The cold remains, but its edge softens slightly. His muscles stop bracing. The ache fades back into the background. Minutes pass. Sleep does not return, but rest does. Ethan remains awake, eyes closed, thoughts quiet. He is no longer fighting the cold. He is simply existing within it, letting his body do what it can. Ben's breathing evens out again, though his sleep remains light. He will wake again before morning, but not yet. Walter continues his slow, steady breathing, his body conserving energy with practiced efficiency. He has woken briefly too, enough to register Ethan's movement. But he does not surface fully. He trusts the rhythm to carry him through. The night continues unchanged. Snow falls, wind holds. The fire outside dims further, its light now barely a suggestion beneath ash and snow. The camp remains intact, quiet, enduring. Ethan does not know how much time passes before his awareness softens again. Perhaps another half hour, perhaps more. The cold recedes just enough to allow a thin veil of rest to settle over him. He slips into sleep once more, shallow and fragile, aware that it may break again at any moment. For now, it holds. Inside the tent, 4 bodies breathe together in the darkness, their shared warmth and shared discomfort binding them in a quiet, unspoken way. Sleep comes and goes, fractured and imperfect, but it comes all the same. The night accepts this without comment. The body makes its decisions quietly. It does not ask permission, and it does not wait for comfort. When the night stretches long enough and resistance proves useless, the body turns inward and begins to manage what remains. Ethan's heart slows without his noticing. The quickened rhythm from earlier, brought on by cold and waking, gradually eases. Each beat spaces itself farther apart, deliberate and economical. His chest rises less dramatically now. Breath slips in through his nose, deeper, steadier, filling his lungs fully before leaving again in a long, controlled release. He is awake, but only just. The cold still presses up from the ground, but his awareness of it has softened. Sensation retreats from the edges of his body, fingers, toes, ears, drawn inward toward the center where warmth is preserved. His hands, tucked close to his chest, feel less stiff. The ache in his shoulder dulls further, slipping beneath the surface of attention. This is not rest. It is regulation. Walter's breathing provides a constant reference point at Ethan's back. It is slow and even, unbroken by sighs or shifts. Each inhale expands his ribs slightly. Each exhale empties them completely. There is no hurry in it, no hesitation. The sound is faint, but consistent, like a tide that no longer surprises the shore. This steadiness is not accidental. Walter Hayes has learned how to sleep in pieces, how to let his body rest without surrendering fully to unconsciousness. Years of nights like this, on frozen ground, under canvas, beside men who depended on him without saying so, have trained his nervous system to settle when it can and conserve when it must. The rhythm of his breath is the clearest sign of that adaptation. Ethan finds himself matching it again, not deliberately, but naturally. His own breathing lengthens to mirror Walter's, each cycle stretching slightly longer than the last. With each exhale, tension drains from muscles that have been holding themselves rigid for hours. Across the tent, Ben lies still, eyes closed but not fully asleep. His breathing has changed too. less shallow now, more measured. The frantic edge that marked his earlier waking has faded. His body, still young and unused to such nights, has begun to learn under pressure. Ben's heart slows as well, though unevenly. There are brief moments when it quickens again, startled by a sound or a shift in temperature, then settles once more. He is adjusting in fits and starts, the way all beginners do. Tom remains deeply asleep, his body already having made these adjustments earlier. His breath is heavy and slow, his chest rising in broad, unhurried movements. His mass holds heat stubbornly, giving his body a small advantage. Even so, the cold has found him too. His system has simply adapted without waking him. Outside the tent, the wind continues its steady passage. It no longer startles or intrudes. It has become part of the background, another constant the body factors in and then ignores. Snow falls without interruption. In Sarah's tent, the same quiet process unfolds. Her breathing deepens, shoulders relaxing as her body shifts into a low-energy state. She draws her knees slightly closer to her chest, not in discomfort, but in efficiency. Her heart rate drops, her muscles loosening just enough to rest without losing readiness. Sarah's composure has always been built on such internal control. After her husband's death, she learned quickly that panic wastes strength. Calm, even when forced, preserves it. The habit now runs deep enough that her body follows the pattern automatically. Outside, Rook's breathing slows too, settling into a deep, rhythmic pattern. His body curls tighter, tail pressed against his flank. Dogs do not worry about tomorrow or morning. They respond to the present state of things, conserving energy when needed, releasing it when required. The camp grows quieter, not because activity has stopped, but because systems have stabilized. Inside Ethan's tent, the air feels different now. Warmer, slightly heavier, with moisture from breath. Condensation forms faintly along the inside of the canvas, darkening it in patches. The tent roof sags imperceptibly under the weight of snow, but holds. Ethan's thoughts drift, unfocused. He does not think of home, or daylight, or relief. His mind has let go of narrative entirely. There is only sensation and rhythm now. Breath, heartbeat, pressure, warmth. The night exists, but it no longer demands commentary. His heart continues its slow descent toward a resting pace, each beat strong and unhurried. Blood flow shifts inward, prioritizing vital organs. The tingling in his fingers fades as circulation redistributes. His jaw unclenches fully, teeth no longer pressed together against the cold. This adjustment brings a strange calm. Not comfort, but balance. Walter's breathing remains the anchor. It does not change. It does not falter. The steady cadence is as reliable as the ground beneath them, even if that ground is cold and unforgiving. This, Ethan realizes dimly, is what experience looks like at rest. Ben's breathing steadies further. His body stops twitching. The shallow sleep he has been slipping in and out of deepens just enough to hold him for a while. His heart rate lowers, shoulders slackening. He will wake again later, but for now, the body has found a workable rhythm. Time stretches. Minutes pass without distinction. The night does not mark them. There is no sense of progress, only continuation. Ethan remains aware, but not alert. His body has done what it can to adapt. What remains is simply to endure. Outside, the fire has dimmed to embers, its light nearly gone. It no longer plays a role in warmth or reassurance. The camp does not depend on it now. Bodies have taken over that task internally. The wind maintains its course. Snow keeps falling. The world beyond the tents remains unchanged. Inside, Walter exhales slowly, then inhales again, the same measured pace he has kept for hours. The sound is quiet, but it carries authority. It tells the night, if the night were listening, that this body knows how to last. Ethan's breathing aligns fully now, his heart beating in time, with rest rather than response. The cold remains, but it has been accounted for. The body has accepted its limits and adjusted accordingly. This is not sleep in the way people imagine it. It is not warmth or ease. It is equilibrium. And for now, that is enough. The cold sharpens as the night thins. It is not sudden, not dramatic. It arrives the way a thought does when sleep has worn away. Quiet, precise, undeniable. No one is sleeping now. Inside the tents, bodies lie still, but awareness has returned to all of them in different ways. The hour before dawn has its own temperature, its own character. Heat that was conserved earlier has been spent. The ground has taken what it wanted. The air feels heavier, denser, as if even breath must work harder to move. Ethan is awake, eyes closed, listening. He does not open them because there is nothing to see that would help him. Darkness would only confirm what his body already knows. The cold has found every place it can reach. His shoulder aches again, sharper than before. His hip feels bruised, though he knows there is no injury. Only pressure and time. He does not shift. He knows better now. Walter lies just behind him, still turned the opposite way, their backs no longer touching fully. The shared warmth has thinned, stretched too far by the length of the night. Walter is awake as well. Ethan can tell by the change in his breathing. Not faster, not shallower, but more deliberate. Each breath is placed carefully, as if Walter is measuring the cost of every movement. Neither man speaks. They do not need to. Across the tent, Ben lies on his back, eyes open, staring into the curve of canvas above him. Oh, his face is pale in the faint light that leaks through the seams. His breath fogs the air steadily, but there is tension in his jaw again, a sign that the cold has reached a level his body no longer ignores. He flexes his toes inside his boots, trying to coax warmth back into them. The sensation does not return. He exhales through his nose, slow and controlled, copying what he has seen the older men do. Tom has woken too. He lies motionless, listening to his own breathing, surprised to find himself awake. Usually, sleep holds him longer. Tonight it has released him early. He does not complain. He simply adjusts his grip on the blanket, pulling it tighter around his shoulders, and waits. Outside the tent, the camp is silent. The wind has eased, but that offers no relief. Without it, The cold settles more completely, sinking into every surface without resistance. Snow no longer falls in visible flakes. Instead, fine ice crystals drift through the air, barely noticeable unless they catch the light. The fire is gone now, not extinguished but buried. Coals sealed beneath ash and snow, their heat absorbed by the ground long ago. There is no glow, no warmth to mark the center of the camp. Rook stands up slowly, joints stiff. He shakes once, a full body motion that sends a fine dusting of snow into the air. He does not bark. He does not whine. He steps a few paces, circles, then sits facing the eastern horizon, though there is nothing to see yet. His posture is alert, but patient. Animals feel this hour too. In Sarah's tent, she lies awake, hands tucked beneath her arms, chin pulled low into her collar. Her breathing remains controlled, but her eyes are open now, fixed on the dark. She knows this is the hardest part of the night. Not because anything happens, but because nothing does. This is the hour when doubt arrives. In Jacob's tent, that doubt takes shape. Jacob is fully awake, heart steady but heavy. His body aches in places he did not know could ache. His breath clouds the air in front of his face, and the sight of it, proof of how cold it is, fills him with a quiet dread. He thinks, briefly, of leaving. The thought is not dramatic. It does not come with panic or images of failure. It is simple and tempting. Standing up, packing his bedroll, walking toward whatever road or shelter lies beyond the dark. It would be easier, he thinks, than another winter like this. Easier than pretending this kind of endurance comes naturally. The idea lingers. He imagines the warmth of movement, blood flowing again into numb limbs. He imagines light, sound, something other than this endless stillness. Then he imagines daylight, not warmth, just light, the pale, thin light that will arrive in an hour or two, no matter what he does. He imagines the tents unchanged, the others rising stiffly, brewing coffee, speaking little. He imagines Walter's calm face, Sarah's steady hands, the way no one would comment on how hard the night had been. Jacob exhales slowly. The thought of leaving loses its shape. It does not disappear, but it no longer pulls at him. He understands now that quitting would not erase the night. It would only shift the struggle to a different place. He remains where he is. Inside Ethan's tent, the cold has reached its deepest point. His body feels hollowed out by it, heat drawn inward so aggressively that his skin feels thin and brittle. He presses his lips together, resisting the urge to move. Walter shifts a fraction, not turning, just adjusting the angle of his shoulders. The movement brings their backs into brief contact again. A thin line of shared warmth. It is not enough to comfort, but it is enough to remind Ethan that he is not alone. No one speaks. Speech would cost energy. It would also break the fragile stillness that holds the camp together through this hour. Silence is not absence here. It is a form of cooperation. The tents do not creak now. Without wind, the canvas has gone quiet, stiff with cold. Ropes hang slack. Poles stand rigid. The entire camp seems to be holding its breath. Time slows further. Minutes stretch, unmarked by sound or movement. Each person counts in their own way. Breaths, heartbeats, imagine distances to morning. No one checks the sky. No one dares to hope too soon. Ethan focuses on breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow, controlled. His chest rises and falls, each movement measured. The cold does not retreat, but it stops advancing. That is enough. Ben does the same, copying without thinking about it. Tom clenches his jaw once, then releases it. Sarah adjusts her shoulders, then stills again. Jacob stares into darkness until his eyes burn, then closes them and breathes. Outside, Rook remains seated, unmoving, a dark shape against the snow. He waits, not because he knows what is coming, but because waiting is what remains. This is the quietest hour. The night has spent everything it will spend. The cold has reached its limit. There is nowhere left for it to go. And still, no one sleeps. Still, no one speaks. They wait together, separate, but aligned, each holding their place until the balance tips. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon, morning exists. Not yet, but soon. Nothing is done. No plan is formed. No movement is chosen. The camp lies suspended in the narrow space between night and morning, a place where action would feel intrusive and effort unnecessary. Bodies remain where they are, arranged carefully hours ago, now held in place by cold and patience rather than intention. Ethan lies still, eyes closed, breath measured. He no longer tests the ache in his shoulder or the numbness in his fingers. He has learned that checking only sharpens awareness. Instead, he lets his body exist as it is, present, uncomfortable, functioning. The ground beneath him remains hard and cold, but it has stopped demanding attention. The sensation has flattened into a steady pressure, neither worsening nor easing. Water lies behind him, equally motionless. His breathing is slower now, deeper than before. Each inhale drawn without urgency. He has entered the waiting phase that comes after endurance and before relief. It is not rest exactly, but it costs very little energy, and that matters more at this hour than comfort ever could. Neither man turns. Neither man reaches for warmth. What they have is enough to hold them in place. Across the tent, Ben remains on his back, hands folded loosely over his chest beneath the blanket. His eyes are closed, though sleep has not returned. He has discovered that lying still hurts less than shifting. The urge to move comes and goes, but he lets it pass each time, focusing instead on the slow rhythm of his breath. Tom lies quietly, awake, but calm. His earlier surprise at waking has faded into acceptance. He stares into the dark beneath his hat brim, thoughts absent, content to wait without needing to know how long. Outside, the camp is unchanged. Snow no longer falls heavily. Instead, it drifts lightly. Individual crystals moving through the air without pattern. The wind has weakened, losing its earlier insistence. It does not stop entirely. It never does. But it slips around the tents now, rather than pushing against them. The canvas answers with softer sounds, a low whisper instead of a groan. The difference is subtle, but everyone feels it. The tents no longer strain. Ropes hang with a bit more slack. Poles creak less. The camp exhales as one. In her tent, Sarah notices the shift immediately. She opens her eyes and listens, recognizing the change in tone rather than volume. The wind has not left, but it has released its grip. That, she knows, means the worst has already passed. She does not move. Sarah Whitcomb has learned that waiting is an active skill. It requires restraint, not passivity. Her tall frame remains curled within her bedroll, knees drawn slightly inward, hands tucked where they will stay warm longest. Her face is calm, expression unchanged, as if carved from habit rather than choice. Years ago, during the winter, she lost her husband. She learned the cost of impatience, standing too soon, moving too early, thinking the night had ended before it had. All of it had consequences. Since then, she waits until change announces itself clearly. This hour has not done that yet. Outside her tent, Rook lies on his side now, legs tucked, head resting on the snow. His breath rises and falls steadily, white vapor lifting briefly before fading. He senses the wind easing, the way animals always do, and his body relaxes in response. He does not stand. He does not reposition. He waits. Near the eastern edge of the camp, Jacob lies awake, eyes open, staring into nothing. He has stopped thinking about leaving. The thought returns occasionally, like an echo, but it no longer carries weight. Instead, he notices smaller things. The way the air feels less sharp when he inhales, the way the silence has softened, the way his muscles ache less when he stops bracing them. Waiting, he realizes, is different from giving up. Waiting is choosing not to spend energy on what cannot be changed. Jacob's breathing slows further, his chest rising and falling in longer intervals. He lies still, resisting the urge to roll onto his side again. The last time he moved, cold rushed in and took too long to leave. Now he lets stillness do its work. Inside Ethan's tent, the shared air grows warmer by a fraction. Breath continues to cycle through the space, rising, cooling, sinking again. Condensation darkens the canvas slightly more, but nothing drips yet. The tent holds. Time stretches again, but the quality of it has changed. Earlier, each minute carried tension. Now, the minutes feel empty. Not in a frightening way, but in a neutral one. There is nothing to anticipate, and nothing to endure beyond what is already present. Ethan notices that his jaw is no longer clenched. His tongue rests loosely against his teeth. His shoulders have dropped without his realizing when it happened. These are small signs, but meaningful ones. His body has decided that vigilance is no longer necessary. Walter remains still, breathing even. His heart rate has settled into a slow, steady pace that will carry him until morning without strain. This is the state he trusts most. Not sleep, not full wakefulness, but something in between, where awareness fades without disappearing. Ben closes his eyes fully now. He does not expect sleep, but rest arrives anyway, thin and quiet. His thoughts dissolve, leaving only sensation and breath. He is still awake, but he is no longer restless. Tom sighs once, deeply, then stills again. Outside, the wind slips past the camp. Weaker now, its voice reduced to a soft hiss that barely stirs the canvas. Snow shifts gently against the base of the tent, settling rather than piling. The fire pit remains dark. No one considers relighting it. At this hour, flame would offer nothing but false promise. The day will come on its own time. The mountains remain unseen, but their presence feels closer now, as if the dark has thinned enough to let their shape press against the sky. The waiting continues. No one counts seconds. No one imagines the future. No one reaches for comfort that does not exist. They lie where they are, conserving what remains, trusting that the balance will tip when it is ready to tip. Somewhere far beyond the camp, the horizon has begun to change. Though it is not yet visible, light has not arrived, but darkness has lost a fraction of its hold. The wind weakens further, not gone, but gentler, as if retreating without fully leaving the field. Inside the tents, the waiting deepens. It is not hope. It is not relief. It is simply patience, practiced quietly, one breath at a time. The first light does not arrive boldly. It does not push the night away or announce a turning point. It appears instead as a thin suggestion, nor no more than a faint wash of colour at the far edge of the world, barely distinguishable from the dark that still holds everything else. A narrow band of pale pink settles along the eastern horizon. It is so slight that it could be missed entirely. No tent flap lifts. No one sits up to look for it. Yet something changes all the same. The night, which had felt endless only moments before, begins to loosen its grip. Inside Ethan's tent, the difference registers without sight. The air feels less dense, not warmer, at least not yet, but less heavy, as if the pressure of darkness has eased. Ethan's breathing deepens further, no longer measured with effort, but guided by instinct. His body senses the shift before his mind does. Behind him, Walter opens his eyes. It is the first time he has done so all night. His gaze is steady, unfocused at first, adjusting slowly to the dimness inside the tent. He does not move his head. He does not change his posture. He simply opens his eyes and lets awareness return, quiet and complete. Walter Hayes looks older in this light, not because dawn reveals age, but because rest has stripped away the small tensions that usually disguise it. The lines in his face soften. His expression is calm, almost neutral. There is no relief in it, no satisfaction, only recognition. He has reached this hour many times before. Walter breathes out slowly through his nose, then in again, confirming what his body already knows. The worst of the night has passed. The cold may linger, but it will not deepen further. That is enough. Ethan stirs faintly in front of him, sensing the change without waking fully. His shoulders relax another fraction. The ache in his back remains, but it no longer sharpens. The ground still draws heat, but its pull has weakened. The night has begun to retreat. Across the tent, Ben opens his eyes too. He blinks once, then again, staring into the dark canvas ceiling. He does not see the light. He cannot from here, but he feels the difference. The silence has shifted. It is no longer tight. It no longer presses inward. Ben exhales. A long breath he did not realize he was holding. Tom rolls his head slightly, face turning toward the tent wall. His eyes remain closed, but his breathing changes, becoming deeper and more regular. His body, tuned to labor and daylight, recognizes the approach of morning even before his mind does. Outside, the camp responds in subtle ways. Rook rises from the snow and stretches. Hind legs first, then front, spine arching slowly. His breath comes out in thick, white clouds. He shakes once, sending ice crystals scattering. Then stands still, ears forward, facing the east. He cannot see the color on the horizon, but he feels the world shift. The cold is still there, sharp and present, but it has lost its edge. The air carries a different quality now, less final, more temporary. Near the supply sled, Sarah sits up for the first time. She moves carefully, rolling onto one hip before pushing herself upright. Her joints protest briefly, then settle. She wraps her coat tighter around her tall frame and pauses, listening. Sarah Whitcomb's face is drawn, but composed. The night has left its marks. Dark shadows beneath her eyes, a stiffness in her shoulders. But her expression holds steady. She looks toward the eastern edge of the camp, though the tents block her view of the horizon. She does not need to see the light to know it is there. Sarah has always trusted timing more than sight. After her husband died, she learned that some changes arrive quietly, without signs anyone else notices. Dawn is like that. It does not need witnesses. She remains seated, hands resting loosely on her knees, waiting. The pale light strengthens by degrees, still faint but unmistakable now. The pink band widens slightly, shifting toward a muted lavender. Darkness pulls back reluctantly, releasing its hold on the edges of the world first. The mountains remain unseen, but their outlines press closer to visibility, like shapes forming behind closed eyes. Inside Ethan's tent, the air brightens almost imperceptibly. The seams in the canvas glow a shade lighter, no longer pure black. Ethan's eyes flutter open for a moment, then close again. He's not ready to wake yet, but something inside him has already begun to rise. Walter remains awake, eyes open, breathing even. He does not disturb Ethan. There is no need. The light will do that work on its own. Walter's thoughts are minimal. He does not review the night or measure its difficulty. He simply notes that it is ending. That has always been enough for him. Jacob, in his tent, finally notices the change clearly. He turns his head slightly and sees it through a narrow gap at the base of the canvas. A faint reflection on the snow, just enough color to confirm what he has been waiting for. His chest loosens in response, not with joy, but with release. The night did not defeat him. It did not need to. Jacob lies back and closes his eyes, letting the knowledge settle. He stayed. He endured. That fact will matter to him later, even if he does not name it now. The wind has nearly stopped. What remains is a weak, wandering breath of air that moves without purpose, stirring nothing. The tents stand quiet, their earlier complaints silenced by the stillness of approaching day. Snow no longer falls. It rests. Time begins to move again. Minutes regain meaning. The long suspension of the night breaks into smaller pieces. Moments that lead somewhere, rather than looping endlessly. Inside the tents, bodies respond slowly, carefully, as if waking too quickly might offend the fragile balance. No one speaks. No one rises yet. They allow the light to continue its work. The pink on the horizon fades into a pale, colourless glow, spreading upward. Night retreats further, not in defeat, but in completion. Walter closes his eyes once more, not to sleep, but to rest until movement becomes necessary. Ethan's breathing deepens, his body preparing to wake. Ben rolls onto his side, knees drawing up reflexively, then stills. Tom sighs softly. Outside, Rook takes a few steps forward, then stops, as if marking the boundary between night and day. The first light has arrived. The night has begun to let go. Ethan sits up slowly, as if the motion itself must be negotiated with the cold. He does not rise in one movement. First, his shoulders lift, peeling away from the wool and the lingering warmth at his back. Then he pauses, letting the blood catch up, letting the sharp ache in his spine settle into something manageable. Finally, he pushes himself upright, breath leaving his mouth in a long white cloud. The world feels different now. Not warmer, at least not by much, but altered. The darkness that pressed inward for so many hours has thinned, retreating toward the edges of things. Shapes inside the tent have definition again. The canvas above him is no longer an unbroken curve of black, but a pale surface mottled with frost and shadow. Seams show themselves. Rope lines are visible, traced lightly with ice. Ethan draws his knees up and plants his boots on the frozen ground. The cold bites immediately, sharp and unmistakable. He winces once, jaw tightening, then relaxes again. This pain is expected. It is part of waking. Behind him, Walter moves. He does not sit up quickly. He never does. Instead, he braces one hand against the ground, fingers spread wide inside his glove, and shifts his weight forward. His movements are deliberate, economical, shaped by years of mornings that began like this one. He pauses midway, spine bent, breath steady, then pushes again until he is upright. Walter Hayes sits with his back straight, shoulders squared, head slightly bowed as if acknowledging the morning rather than greeting it. His face is calm, lined and pale in the early light. The stiffness in his joints shows only in the careful way he moves, not in any sound or complaint. Slow, but solid. Ethan glances back at him, a brief look of recognition passing between them. No words are exchanged. None are needed. The night has already said everything it needed to say. Across the tent, Ben sits up too, more abruptly, as if worried that hesitation might trap him in the cold. He draws in a sharp breath when his boots touch the ground, then laughs quietly under his breath. Half disbelief, half relief. His hair is flattened by his hat, his face drawn and pale, but his eyes are clear. Tom follows last, rolling onto his side and pushing himself upright with a grunt. He stretches once, arms raised overhead, joints popping audibly. The sound echoes strangely in the tent, loud after so many hours of silence. Still here, he mutters, not to anyone in particular. Outside, the camp is stirring. Tent flaps lift slowly, one by one, releasing trapped air and breath into the cold morning. Figures emerge stiffly, wrapped in coats and blankets, boots crunching against the snow. No one moves quickly. Morning does not require speed, only presence. Sarah steps fully out of her tent now, tall and straight, despite the stiffness that must be pulling at her muscles. She adjusts her coat with practiced hands and scans the camp briefly, eyes sharp and alert. Her face carries the quiet authority of someone who has seen nights like this before and knows what comes next. She catches Ethan's eye and nods once. That is all. Sarah Whitcomb does not ask how the night was. The answer is visible in the way everyone moves, in the set of shoulders and the careful steps. Questions would add nothing. Near the edge of the camp, Jacob stands outside his tent, boots planted wide in the snow, arms folded across his chest. He breathes deeply, filling his lungs with cold air that burns but also clears his head. The sky above him has lightened further now, the pale band on the horizon spreading upward, turning grey into silver. Jacob looks around slowly, taking in the scene. The tents are still standing. The horses are still there, shifting and stamping lightly. The people, stiff, tired, quiet, are all present. A realization settles over him with surprising force. They've made it, not in a dramatic sense. No triumph, no celebration. Just the simple fact of it. The night is over, and they are here to see what comes next. The thought loosens something in his chest he did not realize he was holding tight. Jacob exhales and lowers his arms. Rook trots past him, tail low but wagging faintly, nose to the ground. Frost clings to his whiskers, his coat dusted white. He pauses, looks up at Jacob briefly, then continues on toward the center of the camp where movement promises routine. Animals understand survival without naming it. Ethan steps out of the tent and straightens slowly, feeling the pull in his back and legs. The cold is still sharp, but it feels different now. Temporary, rather than absolute. He rolls his shoulders once, working stiffness out inch by inch, then stamps his feet lightly to bring sensation back into his toes. The snow beneath his boots is hard and squeaks faintly with each movement. The sound is oddly reassuring. It means the ground has finished taking what it will take. Walter steps out behind him, bracing briefly against the tent pole before letting go. He stands quietly, hands resting on his hips, eyes scanning the horizon. The early light outlines his figure, emphasizing the straightness of his posture, despite the years etched into him. He nods once, as if confirming something to himself. The worst is done. Around them, the camp gathers itself without instruction. Someone reaches for a coffee pot. Someone else shakes snow from a saddle blanket. Quiet conversation begins. Low, practical, without commentary on the night just past. No one speaks of survival. No one speaks of fear. There is no need. Jacob watches all of this with a new understanding. He notices the lack of drama, the absence of relief or celebration. These people do not mark survival with words. They simply move on, carrying the night with them, without letting it define what comes next. He feels a strange mix of pride and humility. He endured, yes, but he also understands how much he learned by watching rather than doing. Ethan catches Jacob's eye across the camp and gives a small nod. Not encouragement, not praise, just acknowledgement. Walter moves toward the fire pit, slow but steady, bending carefully to brush snow aside and uncover the buried coals. He works without haste, hands knowing exactly where to press and how much force to use. In moments, a faint red glow answers him from beneath the ash. Life resumes. The sky continues to brighten. The pale light spreading evenly now, dissolving shadows rather than pushing them away. The night has not been defeated. It has simply completed its work. Ethan takes one more deep breath and lets it out slowly. His body still aches. His hands are still cold. But he is upright, alert, present. That is enough. The fire is rebuilt without ceremony. No one announces the task. It simply begins when Walter kneels beside the pit and brushes away the crust of snow and ash with slow, deliberate strokes. His gloves are stiff with cold, fingers not as quick as they once were. But his hands remember the work even when his joints protest. Beneath the ash, a dull red glow answers him. Walter pauses, watching it for a moment, as if acknowledging an old acquaintance. Then he feeds it carefully, one small stick at a time, never rushing, never crowding the flame. The wood catches with a faint hiss, releasing a thin ribbon of smoke that rises straight into the cold air before drifting away. The fire grows modestly. Enough. Ethan stands nearby, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against the lingering cold. He watches the flame take shape, feeling its warmth reach his face in uneven pulses. It is not strong, but after the night, it feels almost indulgent. Sarah joins them, carrying the battered coffee pot from where it hung overnight beneath the cook tent. The metal is blackened with years of use, its handle wrapped in fraying cloth to keep hands from burning. She moves with quiet efficiency, setting it near the fire without comment. Sarah Whitcomb's face looks softer in the early light, though the lines remain. Her hair, freed from its braid, has loosened slightly, strands escaping around her temples. She looks tired, but steady, like someone who understands that mornings are not about how you feel, but about what you do next. She pours water into the pot from a canvas canteen, the sound sharp and clear in the stillness. Then she adds coffee grounds, measured by instinct rather than sight. The lid goes on with a soft clink. "Give it a minute," she says calmly. More to the fire than to the people around them. The camp gathers. Ben stands close, rubbing his hands together, breath fogging the air. His movements are quicker now, energy returning in short bursts. He watches the pot with an intensity that borders on reverence. His face still carries the marks of the night, reddened cheeks, shadowed eyes. But there is relief in the way he shifts his weight, no longer frozen in place. Tom crouches on the other side of the fire, stretching his legs out one at a time. He grins faintly as warmth touches his boots. "Smells like morning," he says. No one responds, but the comment hangs in the air comfortably. Jacob approaches last, slower than the others, hands still tucked under his arms for warmth. He stops a few steps back, unsure where to place himself. His posture is looser now, the tension of the night eased, but something in him remains tentative, as if he is still adjusting to the idea that the night has ended. He watches the fire and the pot, breathing in the scent of smoke and coffee. As it begins to rise, the smell triggers a deep, almost physical response in him. His shoulders drop, his jaw unclenches, his thoughts narrow to this one simple promise. Heat, awake, here. The water begins to tremble inside the pot, a faint rattling sound as tiny bubbles form along the metal bottom. Sarah adjusts the pot's position slightly, nudging it closer to the heart of the fire. She does not crouch or lean unnecessarily. Every movement is measured, conserving effort. The coffee starts to boil. The sound is gentle but unmistakable, a rolling murmur that feels out of place after the long silence of the night. Steam lifts from the spout, twisting into the pale air before vanishing. The scent deepens, rich and bitter, filling the space between the tents. Ethan inhales deeply and lets the breath out slowly. The warmth reaches his chest now, spreading inward in a way that feels different from body heat. This warmth carries intention. It is something made, not merely endured. Walter reaches for the tin cups stacked beside the fire pit. They are mismatched, dented, each bearing the marks of countless mornings like this one. He sets them out, one by one, movement steady despite the stiffness in his hands. When the coffee is ready, Sarah nods once. Walter pours. The liquid is dark and steaming, sloshing slightly as he fills each cup in turn. He pours carefully, ensuring no one is left with less than the others. When he reaches the last cup, he pauses. He looks up at Jacob. Jacob freezes for a moment, unsure. He meets Walter's gaze and feels a brief flicker of uncertainty, an old habit of deferring to those who have endured longer, suffered more. He takes a half step back instinctively. Walter extends the cup toward him. Here, he says simply. Jacob hesitates, then steps forward and takes it with both hands. The metal burns slightly through his gloves, but he does not pull away. He welcomes the sting. It proves that his hands are still alive. Thanks, he says, voice rough. Walter nods, already turning back to his own cup. Jacob lifts the coffee carefully and takes a small sip. The liquid is almost too hot, bitterness sharp on his tongue. He winces, then laughs quietly under his breath. The warmth spreads immediately, moving from his mouth down into his chest and stomach, radiating outward. It feels like the first true reward of the morning, not for effort, but for persistence. Ethan watches the exchange without comment. He understands the gesture for what it is. Not generosity, not ceremony, recognition. Sarah takes her cup and steps back slightly, cradling it in both hands. She sips slowly, eyes half-lidded, letting the heat do its work. Her shoulders relax, just a little. Tom drains half his cup in one go, then exhales loudly. That'll do, he says. Ben follows suit, less boldly, but no less gratefully. He grimaces at the bitterness, then smiles despite himself. Rook sits near the fire, watching the humans with quiet interest. He does not beg. He does not approach too closely. The heat is enough for now. His tail thumps once against the snow. The light continues to strengthen. The sky above the camp has shifted fully now. Darkness replaced by a pale, diffuse glow. The mountains are visible at last, their outlines sharp against the brightening sky. Snow on their slopes reflects the light faintly, giving the impression of distance and depth that had vanished during the night. Steam rises from cups and breath alike, mingling in the cold air. Conversation begins. Not about the night, not about survival, but about simple things. Where to head next, how long the snow might hold, whether the horses look rested enough. Jacob listens more than he speaks, sipping his coffee slowly. Each swallow grounds him further in the present. The night recedes with every breath, not erased, but absorbed into memory where it belongs. Walter finishes his coffee and stands, stretching carefully. He looks toward the eastern sky, then back to the camp. His face remains composed, but there is something like quiet satisfaction in his posture. The morning has been earned. Ethan drains the last of his cup and feels the warmth settle fully into his core. His body still aches, but it feels workable now, alive. He flexes his fingers and nods once to himself. The fire crackles softly, steady and controlled. Coffee steam thins. Cups empty. The camp has crossed a threshold. The night is complete. The sun rises slowly, as if aware that haste would feel out of place here. It does not burst over the horizon or scatter the cold in a dramatic sweep. Instead, it lifts itself inch by inch, pale at first, then steadier, spreading a soft light across the plateau. Snow still covers everything: the tents, the ground, the low brush. But the light changes how it is seen. What was once threatening now looks merely present. The cold remains, but it has lost its authority. Ethan stands a short distance from the fire pit, boots planted firmly, shoulders relaxed. He tilts his head back slightly, eyes narrowed against the brightness, and lets the morning reach his face. The light catches the frost on his eyelashes, melting it almost immediately. He blinks once, then smiles. Not broadly, not with relief, but with quiet acknowledgement. He had wondered, during the long hours of darkness, whether the morning would feel earned. Now he understands that the feeling is simpler than that. Morning arrives because it always does. Endurance does not summon it. It merely allows you to be present when it comes. Ethan breathes in deeply. The air is still cold, sharp in his lungs, but it feels clean now. Purposeful. He rolls his shoulders once, feeling stiffness ease as warmth from the coffee and the fire settles into his muscles. The ache remains, but it no longer defines him. Nearby, Walter stands with his hands clasped loosely behind his back, facing the rising sun. The light outlines his profile. High cheekbones, a jaw softened by age, lines at the corners of his eyes that speak of weather rather than worry. His posture is straight, balanced, as if the night has aligned him rather than worn him down. For a long moment, Walter says nothing. Then, almost imperceptibly, he smiles. It is not the smile of victory or pride. It is small enough that it might be missed entirely. A slight lift at one corner of his mouth, a softening around the eyes. It is the expression of someone who recognizes a familiar outcome and accepts it with gratitude. Another night has passed. Another morning has arrived. That is enough. Sarah moves through the camp with quiet purpose, gathering cups, checking straps, making small adjustments that prepare everyone for what comes next without announcing it. Her tall frame moves easily now, the stiffness of the night loosening as circulation returns. She pauses briefly beside the horses, resting a hand against one warm flank, murmuring something too soft to hear. Sarah Whitcomb does not smile openly. She never has. But there is calm satisfaction in the way she works, a steadiness that suggests trust, not in luck or strength, but in repetition. Nights like this have taught her that survival is rarely about extraordinary effort. It is about consistency. Ben stands near the sled, laughing quietly at something Tom has said. His voice sounds lighter now, freer. The tension that clung to him through the night has fallen away, replaced by the kind of tiredness that comes with completion rather than fear. He still feels the cold, still feels the ache in his limbs, but he feels it as part of himself rather than as an enemy. Tom stretches again, arms wide, then drops them with a grunt. He looks around the camp, nodding to no one in particular. Content, Rook trots across the snow, nose down, tail wagging more freely now. He stops near Ethan, looks up briefly, then turns his attention back to the world. The light has changed the rules for him too. The day invites movement, exploration, routine. At the edge of the camp, Jacob stands alone for a moment, watching the sun climb. He wraps his hands around the empty tin cup, feeling the residual warmth against his palms. His face is calm, thoughtful. The night has not vanished from him. It lingers in his posture, in the way he shifts his weight carefully, mindful of sore joints and tired muscles. But it no longer dominates his thoughts. Jacob looks at the tent, the fire pit, the people moving through their familiar motions. He remembers the moment before dawn when he thought about leaving. How close that thought had come to taking shape. He remembers choosing to stay. The realization settles fully now, clear and unburdened. He will come back, not because he enjoys the cold or seeks hardship, but because there is something honest in these nights, something that strips away pretense and leaves only what matters. The night did not test him to see if he was strong enough. It simply existed. He learned how to exist within it. Jacob nods to himself, the decision quiet but firm. When winter comes again, he will return. Not to prove anything, but to participate. Ethan walks over and stops beside him, following his gaze toward the brightening horizon. They stand shoulder to shoulder without speaking, sharing the simple fact of the morning. Looks better in the light, Ethan says finally. Jacob smiles. It does. Walter joins them then, slow and steady as always. He glances at the two younger men, then at the sun climbing above the mountains. His smile returns briefly, softer than before. Doesn't last, he says, nodding toward the snow. No, Ethan agrees, but it's enough. They fall silent again, comfortable in it. The camp begins to ready itself for departure. Not hurried, not rushed. Straps are tightened. Blankets are shaken free of frost. The fire is allowed to burn down naturally, no longer needed. Each action feels unforced, guided by daylight rather than necessity. Snow remains everywhere, bright now under the sun, sparkling rather than oppressive. It has not gone anywhere, but neither has it followed them out of the night. The mountains stand clear at last, their presence undeniable and calm. The sky above them is wide and pale blue, promising nothing except continuity. Walter takes one last look at the horizon before turning away. His smile fades back into neutrality, but the ease remains. He adjusts his gloves, then steps forward to help secure a load. Ethan lifts his face to the light once more, letting it settle into him. He does not feel victorious. He does not feel changed. He feels present. Jacob exhales slowly, shoulders dropping, and turns back toward the camp. He knows now that survival does not require triumph. It requires patience, attention, and the willingness to remain until the night releases its hold. The sun continues to rise. The snow stays. The fear does not. There is no victory here, only passage. And that is enough. At the end of this quiet journey, the lesson is not about bravery or victory. It is about endurance, about learning how to remain present when conditions are harsh and answers are few. The night did not become kinder, and no one defeated it. They simply stayed. They conserved their strength, trusted small routines, and allowed time to do what effort could not. In daily life, we all face nights like this. Moments that feel cold, repetitive, and endless. Times when progress is invisible and comfort is limited. This story reminds us that it is not always action that carries us through, but patience. Not always change, but consistency. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is exactly what they did. Breathe steadily. Do not waste energy on panic. Stay where you are until the light returns. If you are going through a difficult season right now, take this as a gentle reminder. You do not need to win today. You only need to endure with care. Small habits, quiet discipline, and trust in time can carry you farther than force ever will. When this story ends, consider one small action you can take today. Rest better. Speak more gently to yourself. Keep going even when nothing seems to change. And if this story helped you slow down, reflect, or feel less alone, please share it with someone who might need it too. Leave a comment and tell us where you are listening from or what part of the story stayed with you. If you find comfort in stories like this, subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing calm, meaningful nights together. May God bless you, protect you, and give you strength through every difficult season. If this prayer resonates with you, write Amen in the comments and carry this quiet strength with you into your day.